So today I'm basically going to be telling you guys a whole timeline of my relationship and everything leading up to us not being together. Ronke, nice to meet you. If you're new to my channel, hi. I am a Nigerian woman who freely talks about anything that can help break the generational curses that all the other people don't want to talk about, because there's no secrets in all these things, but the way people be acting is like it's very secret. I debated how I was going to talk about this for a while, which is why it took me a second. But I also knew that I have shared a lot on this journey. And a lot of times I've noticed, especially with breakups or things happening, people don't really share what happened. And nobody has context. Not that it's anybody's business, but you know, you choose to be online. Have to talk about something when I'm really over it and when I'm at a place where I'm healed enough that I can talk about it without it bringing up emotions in me. Let's just say it that way. And also, I also feel like the reason why I titled it specifically this specific title was because I don't see enough Nigerian women talking about when they go through things in marriages or even working up to even being in a marriage. And it's really sad because a lot of people who are thinking about marriage or even having that societal mentality about it, they don't have anything to go off of. You know, nobody really teaches you about marriage. Not everybody's parents really even understood the whole concept. So I feel as though if we as a community don't share our experiences, nobody is going to learn, and everybody's going to keep repeating the same mistakes and forcing other people to repeat the same mistakes instead of learning. So that's really one of the reasons I'm doing this video. Second reason I'm doing this video is because I genuinely believe that if this can help at least one woman to not feel as alone, then so be it. So today to go through a whole timeline of all the series of events that happened, meeting my old partner and everything up until the divorce. 19. Now, I always like giving context. At 19 years old, I had just moved to the United States. I came to the United States when I was 18, and that was in 2010. If I miss any of the dates, just know that it's been such a long time that sometimes, you know, I also forget. When I first came to the United States, I always used to come visit frequently and things like that. I schooled mainly in Nigeria. So I went to high school in Nigeria and everything. At that time, I had a really cool friend group. We were all schoolmates and stuff like that. But I noticed that there were a lot of girls in my class that already had boyfriends, or they would be like more, like in society. I actually was very sheltered as a child, like in Nigeria. Like I didn't really go out. I had never been to a club. I'm not even joking. I'd never been to a club. By the time I was like 18, I'd never been to a club. I barely talked to guys because I went to an all-girls school for I think about like 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. The ending 3 years of my high school life, I went to an all-girls school. I only spent most part of my primary school life, which was from like first grade, kindergarten to maybe like 8th grade, in a mixed school where there was boys and girls. So I had like crushes and stuff like that. I already had like some preconceived notions about how boys were, but I didn't know too much because again, I was very, very sheltered. I didn't really even know too much about dating or anything like that. Anything I learned about dating was what I learned from people around me. So everybody around me, we are all the same age. So I'm learning from my peers. Now, at the time before I left Nigeria, while I was 18, I had felt as though it was my rite of passage to kind of have a boyfriend. And I didn't know why I felt this way, but I just felt like, dang, like everybody's getting a boyfriend, I need a boyfriend. Now at that time, there was a social media platform called Bebo. If you know, you know. Hey, Jesus. And I went on Bebo and I was like talking to this guy because, and again, social media, it was just social media. I really loved High Five. I really loved Bebo. So I went on Bebo and I started talking to this guy. And I just felt like, oh, I guess this guy's talking to me, I'm talking to him, let's meet up. We ended up meeting up in like Silverbed Cinema. We ended up meeting up at the cinema. I didn't really like him at all, to be quite honest, but my zeal to have a boyfriend at that time and just be like, I have a boyfriend, was more than me not liking him. And so I was just like, okay, well, he asked me out. We started talking, dating, or whatever it was at that time, and we would do like midnight calls. Now if you're not Nigerian, midnight calls is basically when you have to so basically you had like a specific amount of money that was on your SIM card, and when that money is finished, you can't talk to anybody else. So midnight calls was a time period where you can literally talk until a certain time period for free. So a lot of people used to do midnight calls because at that time what was I getting money from? I was only getting money to do essential things or like stuff like that. So I wasn't really, I was a kid. I was like 17, 18. There was no money coming in. So I used to wait till midnight calls. We would talk all night. It was very cutesy, stuff like that. But when it came down to nitty-gritty, I didn't really want to do anything with him. I didn't want to kiss him. I didn't want to do anything because, again, I was a virgin. I'd never done any of these things. I was very sheltered. I didn't really have much freedom. And keep in mind, I was in Nigeria. So I'm still at home in a weird way. So that goes on. He kind of, we kind of start talking. I don't do anything with him. I don't really feel like doing anything with him. I feel like he fulfilled his purpose, which was I wanted a boyfriend because everybody else had a boyfriend. So then I moved to America. Now, community college. And in community college, I didn't really talk to anybody. I was actually very, very, very shy. When I first came to this country, it was so much shock that I actually didn't know how, and I did not know myself at 19 at all. I don't even think I knew much about myself, except for the fact that I was a creative person. I like to draw. I like to do this. But during that time, I guess I got to know myself a little bit more. I used to listen to music, but I was very shy. I didn't really used to talk to a lot of people. Even in people in my class, I would just literally sit in class and not say anything to anybody. So it was a very lonely time because it was only me and my mom. Like, I'll go home and, after school, that kind of thing. Now, going into actual college, I ended up going to two just separate universities. The first university I went to was a Christian college. So it was very also sheltering because they had a lot of rules. Like, you couldn't kiss people. If you held hands with a boy, it would be like $100 fine. Like, you would literally get fined for doing anything with guys. So I was never actually in this state of like, oh, let me, try my best. Nah, it was none of that. So after that short period of time, I ended up getting back with that guy that I told you I didn't like, that I was my first boyfriend, just because I felt like, well, might as well, I'm not doing anything, might as well. We ended up talking again. Then I ended up realizing, like, what am I actually doing? Just like, of course I liked people along the way, but it was always that thing where it's like, I didn't know if they liked me back. It was always just such a weird thing with boys. And I wasn't, at that time, I was just a girl who, I knew I was pretty, but I will not say that I felt as though I added anything to anybody's life. You know what I mean? Like, I always knew, oh yeah, she's beautiful, but I did not understand my substance as a person, because there's a lot of talk about being beautiful and knowing you're beautiful, but like, I had low self-esteem. Let's just say it as it is. I had low self-esteem. So at that time, it just was weighing on me that I wasn't, like, why wasn't I picked? Yes, I was a pick me. Okay, this is coming from a former pick the hell me. Pick me and put it on my head. That was, and I think it really came from a lot of society conditioning and the people I was around, being in Nigeria, there's a different vibe over there than here. And I was young, I was impressionable. So by the time I came to America, to give you guys context, I was literally not talking to anybody really, and except from that guy that I would go back and forth with, that was like my ex technically. So by the time I was going into like a regular university, not a lot of rules, a lot of freedom, I was thinking, oh my goodness, it's about to be my first semester. God knows what would have done with my life, how my life would have turned out if I don't know. So it was, the party I went to was a couple of months before I entered the new university, which is UMBC. So I ended up meeting him at a party. I ended up meeting him at a party. We were at a party and I was like, "Ooh, that guy's cute," that kind of thing. He didn't come to talk to me, so I was kind of like, I bet another one bites the dust. Because in my mind, I was like, I'm so used to this whole, like, guys, you'll be staring you down, nothing, they won't talk to you. So I just said, all right, bet. But he added me on Facebook the next day. So I was really excited. I was like, oh my God, like, wow, like, this must be it. Like, this is like my actual boyfriend. And I was like super excited. Now we started talking. I cannot remember half of what we used to talk about. But I just know that we really got along. At that time I used to like show him my drawings, was really supportive of my drawings. I think that was the first time that somebody actually really saw me. So I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, like, he's so cool, like that kind of thing. So when I was in college, we used to hang out all the time. Now, as the years passed, everybody knew us. We're thick as thieves. Like, I would do anything for him. He would do anything for me. Everybody knew what was up. Like, we were locked in. Like, nobody was saying nothing to us. And we were locked in on each other's side. It wasn't no like, oh, this person. No, we were like equally sacrificing things for each other. Like, for example, like I wasn't even a very rebellious person at that time. Like, I was very like, stay home, do this. But I started kind of like rebelling a little bit and like, wanting to go over to his house and things like that. So my mom ended up meeting him this one random time, which was kind of strange. He came over to like help me clean my house because my parents were coming home, and they ended up meeting him. And it was really weird because I was just kind of like, oh, now my parents know that I have this guy that I've been talking to, which is also kind of weird because I never had been in this kind of situation. I didn't know how to handle the fact that I actually had a man in my life, which was wild to me at that time. In the military at that time, because the military was paying for his school. So he ends up going away for basic training. If you are a military person, basic training is like this, like 2-3 month thing, maybe even 6 months. No, I think it was 2-3 month thing, where they went. So it was giving Dear John. He was like writing me letters, which was so cute. I was like, damn, like, this is some like movie shit. And the thing about me is I'm a hopeless romantic. So in my head, I was like, locked in. Are you kidding me? Like, no eyes for nobody else, because I was just like, this is it. This is my boyfriend. He had already asked me to be his girlfriend because he was like, oh, he had like mentioned in the conversation that like, oh, somebody had been talking to me, and I mentioned that you were my girlfriend. So I was like, oh, you're not gonna ask me? And he asked me, blah blah. It was back then, nobody cared about giving a proposal like how everybody cares now. I was just excited that somebody was liking me, I was liking them. It was just such a cute vibe. It was a cute vibe. So I end up being like, I bet, like, this is it. We locked in. Ain't no switching up. However, what I didn't realize was that there was a lot of control that was in there. But because I didn't trust myself and I didn't trust that I knew myself, I was putting a lot of control in his hands, that I didn't realize at the time. Like, looking back now, I could say that, but I didn't realize then, like, oh, you're a boyfriend. You're not supposed to like care if I come back from school late, and you're not supposed to care if I have a lot of friends. I placed him on a different pedestal, and it kind of we were married even though we just kind of started dating. So in not up to a year into our relationship, he went away for this basic training 2-3 months. Now, I felt like this was a freedom thing, because in a way I didn't realize how I hadn't been going out really. I'd just been in this like new relationship bubble. So when he left for basic training, that whole couple of months, I was so like, oh my God, like, let me hang out with my friends again. Like, let me, meet I'm a very, very social person. So like, I was like, let me meet my community. So I had one of my friends I used to hang out with all the time. And there's a guy that also used to hang out with my friend. And we all kind of used to hang out, and it became a thing of all of us hanging out. Now, I started talking to the guy because I didn't at that time realize that when you have a boyfriend, yes, I knew that you're not supposed to really talk to other guys, but in a way, like, I thought that I could have this guy as my friend, but I didn't know that this guy really liked me. So I was just kind of like, oh, I kind of caught on after a while, but at that time I still used to talk to my boyfriend, obviously, because he would call me from the military and stuff like that. So I remember the one time he called me and I was like, damn, like, there's this guy that I talk to. Like, I never like kept anything. I was like, hey, this is this guy, but it's nothing, because from my perspective, I was locked in with my babe. I was like, yeah, that's my babe. This guy, whether you talk to me, whatever you do, it doesn't even matter, because I know I have a boyfriend. I've told him I didn't do anything with him. I mean, now that I think about it, I probably had like an emotional connection with him, which I never actually realized that I might have had at the time. So that was kind of like really weird to me. I didn't know how to explain it, because sometimes you catch feelings that you don't realize you catch feelings. Now, before he came back, I told him everything. I was like, hey, I met this guy, like this happened. Now, I did not realize, it was crazy. I did not realize that this guy that I talked to that summer was going to meet his best friend. So him and this guy and the best friend came together, and then the guy now lied. He lied. That's me and him did stuff when we did not do anything. The pain that entered my chest. Thank God I've already even told the guy that, man, if I hadn't told my boyfriend, what would have happened? I don't know what would have happened. But anyway, I think that was like a weird lingering thing, because he was like super like, damn, like she cheated on me, blah, blah, blah. I never did. Anyway, so fast forward, I think that was like the beginning of how things kind of started crumbling a little bit. I didn't realize that trust is a foundation in a relationship. However, there were already things prior to that were kind of like iffy here and there, but again, did not realize. This is my first love, first everything, anything you can think of, first. So I did not have any other vibe of like, oh, like I can get out of this. Like, I thought to myself, especially because I actually wanted to make a whole separate video about purity culture and how purity culture really messes up your mind. But I generally believe that because I had lost it to him, that was it. Like, we had to get married. Like, it had to work out. Like, everything in my head was like, I lost it to you? Oh no, you're not going anywhere. Whether you like it or not, you are staying here. So I think that after that, we had a couple, we were still in a relationship. I ended up graduating college. He came to my graduation. So now everybody knows about him. Nobody really pressured me for marriage or anything like that, but the years started kind of rolling by. Now, keep in mind, I met him at 19. Now, almost like 4 or 5 year mark, I remember one of my aunts coming to me and being like, look, Ronke, I know that you want to marry this man, but there's so much more that goes into marriage than just being married, and at that time there were a lot of people that were kind of like saying subtle things to me that made me should have made me think more. But at that time I just thought, you're just a hater, like, because for some weird reason I thought I knew everything. I knew, like, what are you talking about? Like, we locked in. Like, this person can never leave me. We said all these things to each other. We're like locked in. That's it. I've pictured this person as the father of my children. Now you're coming here to tell me that we might not work. Please, I beg, I beg, I beg. So I always just saw, which was very one-sided of me. Like, I should have actually like tuned into what people were talking about. But I also felt as though like I hadn't made so many choices in my life, and I felt like this was the one choice in my life that I was like, let me at least make the choice to find somebody that I want to be with. Now, also year 4, year 5, we started kind of having the marriage conversation. We had broken up a couple of times in our relationship. I'm not gonna lie, we broke up like maybe 3 times in our relationship, just of different things. Like, there would be times where it would be like, oh, you're working too much, because at that time I had started social media, or it'll be just some things here and there of like just arguing about things. And at that time, again, we would have certain arguments that I would realize it's not my fault, but then at the end of the day, I'll end up apologizing, because I'll be thinking like, oh, but I understand your point. And I didn't realize how those little increments of things that I didn't actually have my own boundaries or things to like put forth, because again, this person was basically raising me at this point. Like, this was like my formative years. Like, all I knew was this is this person, and like we have, even though I was developing my own views, I think most of the arguments were me developing my own views. And when I would be developing my own views, if it went against his, instead of being like, oh, it went against his, let's find out to talk about it, it went against his, I have to change my view now, you know. So I felt like I had been kind of like slowly but surely adapting to certain things that he wanted without realizing that that's what I was doing. It just happened slowly over time, and I didn't realize how much I had lost pieces of myself. But because I'm such a strong-willed person who will always like go hard for the things I like, I still kept parts of myself as well. Now, year 4 came along, we started having the marriage conversation. He would say stuff like, oh, are you sure you're ready for marriage? You know, like, I don't know if you're ready and stuff like that. And I never understood back then. If somebody now tells me I don't know if you're ready for marriage, be going. But back then I was just kind of like, damn, that means, you know, always working to prove my worth, always working to prove that like I was ready. What does he mean? Like like just all these things where I felt like I had to like consistently prove myself to make sure that this man picked to me. So finally year 7 comes around and I'm over it. And I've been over it, but I didn't realize that even me being over it should have been a signal of me not to move forward with it. But again, I didn't get to the depth of why I was over it. You know what I mean? I didn't get to that because there was so much going on. I was having fun. I was meeting all these new friends. I was now becoming, you know, popular online. You know, so my life was changing at such a fast pace that I didn't have time to sit down and think about what was going on with me and my relationship. Yes, we had been together for a long time. So, you know, it just seemed like something that was okay to do. You know, even though the red flags were red. The red flags were red, and I should have sat down to think about it and be like, is this the person I want to be with? But again, to me, at that time, before I got married, marriage wasn't a big deal. It was this thing where it was like, oh, well, this is the partner I pick. We've been together. I mean, yeah, we have arguments, but like, it's just arguments. You know what I mean? Like, it's just arguments. Like, when we get married, it's fine. We'll work it out. You know, always just projecting everything to when we get married instead of like sorting out the problems that we were having and seeing if this was something that I could be in long term. Which is why I really feel like people should really just segue. Wait. Okay? Wait till your frontal lobe develops to get married, because you will make a lot of decisions thinking you know, but you really do not know. Like, there's certain things that you should be looking out for with your partner that will tell you if they have abusive tendencies already that you might ignore. And I ignored. I can't see, I'm blind. That was me. I was not seeing. And even people told me, even till now, people, you know, some of my friends will remind me like, Ronke, nobody could tell you anything. No? Nobody could tell you anything. Whether I wanted to say, whether we don't, nobody could tell you anything. And they were right. Nobody could tell me anything because I was locked in. So finally, year 7 comes around, and you know, I'm doing social media now. Life is just getting better. There's things here and there that kind of like, I'm not really sure, you know, I'm not really sure. And I remember like talking to my friend, I'm like, I don't even know, like, is this person I'm really supposed to marry? I started kind of like, you know, kind of deeping it a little bit, and I was like, I'm not sure. So he finally proposed, you know, even though before the proposal, there was a time where I had like caught him on Tinder, which now that I think about it, Tinder was made in like 2011 or something. So technically the whole time that we were in a relationship, there's no reason for you to have Tinder because it was never before we were in a relationship, since we had been in a relationship for so long. And one of my subscribers, funny enough, messaged me and was like, hey, is this your man on Tinder? Nah, I didn't know if it was him or not. I didn't know. But I went to go talk to him because again, that's bestie, that's bae, that's everything. I went to go talk to him. I was like, hey, like, is this you? He's like, no, and you know now, people won't be doing it. And back then there was no AI, so it's not like he's AI. But shortly after she had messaged me again, I was like, hey, that profile randomly started getting taken down. Mumu, like me, I was already engaged. I was like, this person is just trying to spoil my engagement. I didn't think about it. I was just like, whatever, I didn't care. Didn't think anything about it. Again, ignoring the flags, not even trying to and this was like a couple of months before I got married. So I was just kind of like, I beg, I don't care. Which one is I beg, I don't care? This is your future you're talking about, I don't care. Anyway, So ended up getting married. You guys know the whole wedding. It was amazing, but also most people who are in my life right now ended up not coming, because even though I really enjoyed having literally the fairy tale princess wedding of my dreams, I started realizing quickly, especially at the wedding, that like, who are these people around me? Like something was clicking in my head already, and I was like, bruh, whoa, I don't know, is this the right choice? So get married, and shortly after, actually I said shortly after, I got married. I can't remember what dates. Was it August 23rd? Yes, I got married August 23rd. And we got married in California. And literally, I remember coming back from Cali and finding out I was pregnant, like right away. Now, I was confused. I was stressed out. We had just gone through marriage, even though everything was so blissful, you know. That, you know, I started this career that was doing really well. He was still working. Everything was just doing so well, you know. So yeah, of course, a baby would be nice, but I was still very hesitant because I was like, damn, just like that, I didn't even get time to you know, but I always wanted children. I was never the person who didn't want kids. That's the honest truth. I was always the person who was like, I want kids. I would never not want kids. Like, I wanted kids. Now, if I knew the responsibility actual children were, would I have changed my mind? Yes. People change. That's one thing. People change, people grow. You either grow together or you grow apart. And I feel as though I didn't even realize what that meant, or how marriage was supposed to work at that time. Now, I found out I was pregnant. I found out I was pregnant literally a week, not even up to a week, 2 days after I came back from getting married. So I was very anxious, very confused, even though I knew that we were already trying to have a baby because I wanted a kid. I had assumed that because I had irregular periods that I was going to have problems with infertility. How I got that 2 plus 2, just don't ask me questions, okay? I don't know the things that I used to be thinking. I don't know. So I end up being like, all right, you know what, it's mommy time. You know, I tell a couple of my friends, I'm like, oh my god, I'm pregnant, la, la, la. Yeah, I had a miscarriage. Yep, the baby said fetus deletus. Yep. And that was horrific because I didn't even know what was going on. I just wake up one morning and I'm bleeding, and I'm like, bruh, what is happening? I didn't know that I was losing the baby, and it was like 10 weeks old, and it was just so sad. It was such a sad experience. I think that was like really where there's a lot of stress that started being placed on me, because I started thinking that I was probably gonna go on an infertility journey without really even wanting to. And at that time I was still on social media. Nobody even knew. Nobody knew that I was having a miscarriage. I even remember, I think I even posted like the day before or the day after, because for me social media was different back then. I was literally a beauty influencer. I didn't really used to talk too much about what was going on with me. I might mention here and there like, oh, I'm just being stressed, maybe when we're having super huge arguments, because we always argued throughout the whole relationship. It was a very tumultuous relationship. It was never a straightforward, you know, healthy relationship. It was always toxic. But I had been so used to ameliorating and like dealing with the relationship that on the outside it looked great, but on the inside there were a lot of cracks that did not get fixed before we got married. So after the miscarriage, you know, it was really hard on me, and you know, I still, you know, went on, and I started kind of losing friends as well, because you know, life changes and I just didn't know who to trust. You know, it just seemed like, you know, now we were married, things had changed so much, you know. So finally I got pregnant again. Now, I'm not gonna lie, before I got pregnant again, I think I went through a little bit of depression from the miscarriage, because I started really equating it to my worth. I started equating it to how, you know, how I am as a woman, and you know, just so many things. It was just not a time that I could feel that I felt as though I was like myself, you know. Then I end up going, and now I'm, you know, pregnant again. Now, that was Amari's pregnancy. No, I have a 6-year-old now. His name is Amari. That was Amari's pregnancy. I think of all the times of our relationship, that was actually where things started breaking the most. We had been hanging out with friends all the time and things like that, but pregnancy brought out a different side of me because I was extremely clingy. I really wanted, and I mean, I still used to vlog. I mean, I don't know if you guys followed me when I used to kind of vlog here and there. I don't think I vlogged a lot when I was pregnant with Amari because I didn't really announce that I was pregnant until like later. But I would just, be there, but I started kind of getting a little depressed because, he would not be home, and I just kind of started feeling as though like my needs were not getting met. And there would be arguments here and there. Like, I remember we went on a baby moon, and honestly, till today, I still love that baby moon. It was such a fun time. I actually did a whole baby moon vlog. If you were there, you were there. It was a move. But we argued like almost every day of that vacation, and most of the arguments were like, why are you taking pictures on the vacation? Like, you shouldn't be taking pictures, all these things. And I've always been somebody who takes pictures, and it's so crazy because there was a point in time where I had Instagram, and he had just been complaining about how I was like always on Instagram, because at that time was when Instagram first came out and I was really interested in it. So he was just like, why would you be able to be on Instagram? So there was a time I just deleted Instagram. I think that I don't know why I placed him on that high of a pedestal for me to delete my Instagram. It's almost like I wasn't standing up for myself at all. And I know where that stems from now. We're not going to go through that whole therapy session of where that stems from, but I just knew that like it was one of those things where I placed everything just so above the needs of myself, and to the detriment of myself, if anything. So I'm pregnant with Amari. We go on this baby moon, very stressful pregnancy. I had gestational diabetes. I had to check my blood sugar by pricking myself 3 times a day. I was on a meal plan. I was still going through a lot of friendship in and outs. I wasn't really sure who to trust at that time, because it just seemed like I wasn't sure if people were around me because they liked me or because of the clouds, because at that time I was really like popular online, especially after having a baby and things like that. Now, by the time Amari was born, I think I had maybe like 1 or 2 friends still around me, of all the friends that I had, and even all the friends that were like, they would check on me here and there, but I just didn't feel like I had very solid relationships with people around me. And hey, I'm just talking from the perspective of somebody who has already gone through this, in the sense that like, this is what I used to, if I go back then, that's what I used to think. That's not who I am now. All this is past. So during Amari's pregnancy, had Amari. Now, after Amari was born, I think that's actually when I started realizing that things were different. Aside from like the regular, like day-to-day, like maybe like he used to go to work, so I would be home with the baby, but I also was still an influencer. And you guys even know I came back, I took like a whole month off after Amari was born in July. I came back on social media in August, and I was literally churning out 3 videos on YouTube consistently. I was really out there, but it was getting hard for me because back at home, it was a situation where he would come back from work and then just straight do what he wants to do while I was with the baby. So I was really just not having that like support that I really needed at that time. And like he would be in there here and there, like maybe some, like change a diaper here, or like sometimes maybe when I was gonna sit down, it seemed like babysitting in a weird way. And I didn't think of it like that back then, because I hadn't really seen the dynamic between a new baby and a dad. I just knew that like I was getting overwhelmed. I would get overwhelmed. It would cause arguments. It would just be all these things, and it was just stressful. Now, in that whole time, especially because Amari was like a preemie, he was born a month early, that whole time was such a stressful time with me, and I didn't feel like the support that I really needed was really there. But at the same time, I didn't know how to ask for it, because I felt as though asking for it was going against something in me. I don't really know how to explain it. I wish I could like really explain what I'm trying to say. But in that time, Amari is 6 months. I'm finally getting a hang of motherhood, and I end up getting pregnant again. I was not ready for that. I knew that I wanted a lot of kids, yes, but I was not ready to have another child when I knew how overwhelmed I was with the one child I already had. you know, and he was okay with whatever I had to do with it. But at the same time, I really did want a girl. And I just thought to myself, oh man, I knew immediately I got pregnant when I did that ultrasound, because I did not find out I was pregnant until like 10 weeks. When I finally like found out, I was like, this is a girl. I knew immediately it was a girl. In fact, if that ultrasound technician had told me it was a boy, I'd have told her, go and check again. I knew it was a girl. So I was just like, oh man, finally my girl. You know, I started buying like girl clothes, started looking, you know, there was a sense of happiness I felt during that time, you know, because again, all these things are happening and I'm thinking, oh my God, these are my goals and my dreams coming true. I have like a beautiful career. I have a husband, I'm having kids, you know. It just felt so beautiful that the arguments and the little things here and there didn't even matter to me, because I was just like, you know, I would breeze by things, you know, even though we did go to marriage counseling and everything, and even the marriage counselors at some point were like a huge part of our process. But I should have known, even during marriage counseling, there were certain things that we would talk about that I would notice that he wouldn't agree with, but then I would just be like, okay, you know, I just brushed it off. I never took things as seriously as I could, because I don't know why I thought I did not have a choice. I don't know why I thought that. You have a choice. It's your life. If you don't want to be with somebody, don't be with them. You know, you don't have to go on being with somebody just because you feel like history, or, oh yeah, because we slept together. You don't have to do all that. You literally don't, you know. And I remember the times where it was, you know, there were fun times. I wouldn't make it seem like it was all bad. There were fun times, definitely. But I remember at some point I had to start keeping a record of voice memos, because I started realizing that I was losing track of what was going on in arguments, and I didn't understand certain things, and I'll be like trying to figure out my points, and like if I was really, you know, if something was really happening, or, you know, just started literally keeping track on my phone of like how things were, because I did not understand whether the arguments we were having made sense. But again, they didn't think anything of it. Now, I never ever, when I got married, thought I was gonna get divorced. I genuinely thought that this was the person I was gonna be in a rocking chair with at our house while our children have grown up. That's literally what I thought, you know, because when we were friends, but when we weren't, we were not. We were enemies, you know. And I think it was that tiny tie of friendship, because I'm a very sentimental person, and I think that small tie of friendship was what I was holding on to. And also a lot of stuff in the beginning of the relationship, that romance and things in the beginning of the relationship, was what I was holding on to. But it never was that way. Birthday gifts had become scarce, romance had become scarce, certain things that I craved that weren't there had just been obliterated. But I just kept being there because I felt as though, oh well, it will get better, but it kept getting worse. But I didn't want to admit it to myself that it was getting worse. Now, we finally, you know, we all know, if I have to reiterate this, I just have to reiterate this just for this part. 2 months after Ivana was born, went to a mental hospital, came back, and ended up, you know, being in Baltimore. And, you know, everything that happened online with the NSARS movement happened. And, you know, he had my phone. After he responded to somebody, it just went all over the place. And, you know, I just talked about it on my TikTok. If you really want to know like the in-depth situation, go on my TikTok. Because sometimes I feel like I don't want to like keep it feels like beating a dead horse. I don't want to keep rehashing the same things. If you really want to know what happened and everything, I put that separate video on my TikTok. Honestly, I'm really making this video on YouTube because I know that it's going to be a lengthy video. It's not something I can just do on TikTok. I'm not about to do part 1, part 2, part 3. Please, I beg. So, yeah, inside the house, it was very tumultuous. But outside the house, he would be a different person. Like, it would just be this kind of thing where, like, you know, we'll argue and things like that. And I would never forget, there was this one time I was pregnant with Amari, and he had like, I can't remember what was happening. I think I caught him like talking to a girl on his phone again. Whew. I don't know why I was putting myself through the stress. I don't know why. Now that I think about it, like, I just don't know why. I had thought to myself, like, he had been angry and like punched a hole in the door in our house. And I remember people coming over and me never telling them that he was the one that punched the door in the house. And that time I was pregnant with Amari, meaning this was like even like in the beginning. And it was really sad because when I think about it, I'm like, why did I feel the need to keep that from people? And I think the true reason is because I was one of the first people in my age group, or in the people around me, to really get married, start having kids. So I think that there was a part of me that just wanted to keep that like perfectionism, or my close friends, like my real best friends, knew the shit that used to go on, but other people, I would just be like really, and some people would be like, oh, keep your marriage private and stuff like that. So I really wasn't in the business of telling anybody what was really going on. Everything happened online, and I took a step back online, and I became very docile and very depressed for that whole year. That year was really what made me start to realize that I wasn't like he would complain about being my caretaker, because at that time he was my caretaker. At that time he was the person who was with me and all these things, but I didn't realize how I was also very alone. He would be kind of upset that I would be depressed, because I don't think he understood what depression was. Again, I'm not putting blame on anybody, but I just don't think that it was handled in the way it could have been handled. He tried to push me as much as he could to like doing things and stuff like that, but it was just, I was depressed. There was nothing anybody else could do, and for him I felt like that was a lot. Now we finally moved to Arizona, and then I met my new psychiatrist. Things started getting better. However, I think because I was starting to be cognizant, and also I'd now been in therapy for 2 years, life started returning to me in a way where I started kind of gaining consciousness. Like I was seriously gaining consciousness, and I started realizing that every single thing that I was doing, and all the things that I thought that I was doing wrong, or like everything, was basically walking on eggshells in my own home all the time, because any little thing would be an argument, any little thing would be a thing. And at first I was equating it to what's going on, like, oh well, maybe this, maybe that. But after a while, I'm not gonna lie, and I haven't talked about this before, but after a while, he started smoking. So I slowly started equating the two. I was trying to figure out where the anger was coming from. Honestly, I was playing therapist, and I don't know why, but slowly the arguments became more and more. And not only more and more, it became longer. Days, like, I did not like the idea of going to bed angry, but it takes two to tango. And it became this thing where I would just be over it and go apologize. I'll be like, it's not that deep, and for some weird reason, it always came back to me doing something, or me having a problem, or things like that. And started discussing it with my therapist, and my therapist was like, are you sure you're not in an abusive relationship? I said no. Anyway, it just so happened that the arguments kept getting worse, and at that time I literally did not have any friends. We had just moved. I had started trying to build community where we were, but it was really hard because I didn't really want to put myself on social media and be like, hey, who's in Arizona, come hang out. So it took me a while to like kind of like get assimilated, and plus that was around the time I found out Amari had autism, so I'd been trying to do programs with him. Keep in mind, we were still at the end of the pandemic, so I ended up just trying my best to do everything, but it was really hard because I started realizing I was doing everything, and I felt like I had a third child, and it was one of those things that it started really weighing on me, and I started realizing that I couldn't do this by myself. Now, things also started crashing financially because everything was just too much, we had just moved, and gigs weren't coming in as they used to, and it was really sad. But at the same time, we've handled it. Life happens. So we ended up moving to another apartment, and after we moved to that apartment, I think that was really the like slow decline of everything. The arguments started getting closer together. Even though I was getting better, I was taking care of the kids, I was feeling my best, it just seemed like things were just really going downhill. Now, the day that everything like scrambled, my cousin had come to visit me, and I didn't realize that she had missed her flight and everything. I kind of slept through her coming over. So I had told him like, hey, I'm just gonna go pop over, because she had gotten a hotel. She was supposed to stay with me. And I told her, I told her, him, I was like, hey, could you just bathe the kids? This is the first time I actually intentionally asked him to like help me with the kids. And he was like really doing it so begrudgingly. And then Ivana starts crying. Ivana was very attached to me. She's always been very attached to me. There were times where like she would come to my room like in the middle of the night and kick him off the bed and come and sleep with me. It was really interesting. So he ends up getting really upset, and I'm like telling him, I'm like, look, let me just take Ivana. He's like, nope, go take your kids. I mean, it was way more fiery than that. And he ends up like grabbing me by my hands and just like tossing me on the couch. Now at that time I was like shaking up, and he was recording, so I decided to record. I would never put that video online, God forbid, but but I'm laughing, but it's not funny. And at that time I do a lot of nervous laughter. I'm sure if you've been watching me for a while, you know this. And so at that time I ended up just last straw, I showed my cousin the video. She was like really shaking up as well. I started crying, and it just became a whole thing. So I ended up sending the video to everybody in the whole family, because I was tired. I was over it. I was very over it. And for me, that was the last straw. And I was like, okay, what's to do then? Now I was supposed to come to Baltimore for like 2 weeks to just like let things breeze over. But the more things kept progressing, and the more he kept making it seem like I was the one with the mental health issue, and don't they see that I'm the one with the mental health issue, it became really apparent that I was not going to go back. Now, we had just got a new apartment, and I really just left for 2 weeks, so I only had just a few things, so I had to go back and get my stuff. That was a whole nother process, because I had to basically call the cops. He wasn't really he wasn't really being forthcoming with anything, and I was getting irritated, because I'm like, bro, why are you acting like I just want to get my stuff and get the kids stuff and leave? He made things super hard. And even till now, sometimes like I'll talk to other people about it, and it would just be this huge like, what happened type of thing. And even me, there's a lot of this I'm still processing, but I feel like the more I talk about it, especially because I've talked about it on my channel, I feel like I've literally let all the energy go from everything that has happened, because it's such a weird thing to be with somebody for almost 11 years of your life and watch everything crumble down. But then when you start rebuilding, realize that the person was never supposed to be there to begin with. And I feel like I'm literally right where I always have been. It's just that now I have 2 kids, which is so different for me. But after that, I had to start working on getting divorced, which was a whole process entirely. I finally got divorced this year, which was another whole process. He definitely tried to contest the divorce and try to make this whole thing. Don't even really want to go into that, but it was one of those things where like thinking about the things that I've learned, and which is why I did a whole video about the things I've learned, is that the little things are not just little. The little things are the big things. The little things will amount to things in the future. Would I have done it over, if I had a choice to do it over again, would I have done it exactly the same way? No. I feel like I needed to have been in a different position, and I try not to beat myself up about it. There's a lot of self-forgiveness that I've had to practice in this whole process, to not only forgive myself for not knowing, but to also forgive myself for allowing myself to be in spaces where I was no longer wanted for prolonged periods of time, and be around people who, or him, who clearly no longer really wanted to participate in the marriage, and even though there were things here and there that I've tried to like point out that I have as much of a part to play, I also genuinely believe that it's okay for you to want to grow and be in a different place, and I feel like by talking about this, even though this has been, I think this is the longest video I have on YouTube that is not a vlog, but I feel like I really wanted to like just like pour it out, I think with me, I think a lot about the kids and, like, you know, the type of life I'm trying to give them by myself. But I also feel like the only reason why I was able to do half the things, and I used to give him a lot of credit at some point, because, you know, this is somebody who grew with me. We grew together until I realized that the real magic was always me. And coming back home to myself has made me realize that, like, I'm me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm always gonna rebuild. Even that was one of the first things that my therapist told me when I first came to Baltimore. You're a woman, you rebuild. And I never believed it until now. And for me, rebuilding is not necessarily even about like getting things that I've lost back. Rebuilding for me is getting my mind back, you know, getting to that place in my life where I'm now excited about the certain things that I used to do. Is the pain still there? It is sometimes, you know, because it's a decision, it's a huge decision that really did change the trajectory of my life, which is very important for you to really pay attention to who you're marrying. You know, it's one of those decisions that you might not think impacts you, but it impacts all facets of your life. And I'm just glad that I'm still in a place where I can give back to other people just through experience or through the things that I've been through, because I don't know how I would I wish I'd seen a video like this when I was going through things. I wish I'd seen a video like this that let me know that I wasn't alone. But I think the most important thing that I want everybody to take away from this video is that dating is not just dating. And if you want to get married, really think about why you want to marry this person and how you're going to tackle problems together. Because if two people are unequally yoked, I feel like a lot of people talk about unequally yoked being Christian and unchristian, but I generally feel like unequally yoked also can be in mindset and how you guys work on things together. Because marriage is about two people who are able to build something together and understand that there is a bigger thing above them aside from their problems or the things that they feel like they can't talk about. And I feel like with me, I genuinely believe that you have to go through things to understand how to be better and do better in the things that you end up, you know, the decisions that you end up making in life. And honestly, I know that I'm not the only one out there. I know that in our culture, especially as Nigerian women, we are told to be quiet, suffer in silence. But I generally believe that if I had suffered in silence, I would not be where I am today, because suffering in silence will really get you, suffering in silence. I think about it a lot, and I realize that even though I'm not gonna lie, I'm very fortunate that I have my business and I was able to have enough finances to remove myself from that situation. But I know that there are a lot of women out there that are not in that same position. But I will say that you can get there if you save and like make a plan for your life. Because at the end of the day, I will always say this: it's better to be a one-woman show and have your children grow up in a healthy household where they are shown love through other people than to grow up in a tumultuous place. My two kids did not talk when they... And now, even though life looks different for me, I'm grateful that it happened. And I'm grateful that I can finally share this with you guys. And this is all because this is crazy how this is almost a 1 hour video. Let's have a very deep discussion in the comments, because I really want to know, when was it that you knew that it was time to leave your partner, if you're a single mom or even if you're just a divorcee? And how did you go about it? I really want us to be a community where we can help each other get through these type of situations as women, because we are not meant to stand alone. We really need community to be able to process our feelings and to be able to move forward. So don't let anybody talk you into being quiet